Good morning. You're listening to Central Wisconsin's 24-hour information station, AM 1320 WFHR. It's time now for the Morning Magazine, brought to you by Comfort Air Heating, Cooling, Plumbing.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Morning Magazine for this November 24th, 2021, 10:07 on the clock, and you have your host, James J. Malouf, here. At 10:30, we're going to have the ODC join us. Looking forward to talking with Pam Ross and catching up with her. I always enjoy talking with her. Right now, we have Lance Pliml, Wood County Board Chairman, along with our friends Kev and the gang over at Wisconsin Rapids Community Media. A happy Thanksgiving and a good hello to all of them. And happy Thanksgiving to you, Mr. Pliml.
Right back at you. Happy Thanksgiving to everybody out there, their families. Hope it's a great holiday season for you.
How you doing?
I'm doing great.
Good. Good to hear.
Life is good.
Good.
Life is a challenge every day, but, we're pretty lucky to live where we live in Wood County. Down here in Wisconsin Rapids specifically, as we're on this station today. But, when you look around the country and you look at some of the things that occur, tragedy in Waukesha recently and some of the other things that are occurring around the country, we are pretty lucky that we have the lifestyle that we have here.
I think there's some... there's plenty of people out there that need tragedies sometimes, for lack of a better word, need to appreciate what they have. And I think there's a lot of people that just appreciate them in general. And I'm glad you bring this up because we've got some things to talk about today. But I kind of wanted to start there with Thanksgiving being tomorrow and everything. Lance, what are some things that you are thankful about with this community? For example, like just to throw something out there to get the ball rolling, this new sports complex we have. I'm incredibly thankful for that. The jobs it created, the economy it's going to bring, things that we don't even know it's going to be able to bring to the community because we just haven't found out yet. We haven't happened yet. It's there's so much that can happen there, and I feel like that's something that's only going to grow and make this community stronger.
Yeah, I think first everybody starts with, you're thankful for your family generally because that's kind of where it all starts. But then, you get into the community and I think if you actually sat down and you put a pencil to paper, you'd realize that we have a lot more here than you think we have. We talk about on this show often, the people who say there's nothing to do here. Well, I challenge you to do half the things that are available to do on any weekend and get them done because you wouldn't. The sports complex is a great example. We've talked about this over and over, and it came to light this week, but public safety in our area, the fact that we've had the cooperation from the community, the city, the county, and everybody, with our new jail facility, with being able to develop that way, business development, our parks, our recreation, generally, and I stress this everywhere I go, but generally the civility that we have in meetings. I've been really lucky on a county board level. I don't think we've ever had a county board meeting ever get out of hand. And I think that's true of most of our local governmental meetings because of the people who attend. I was talking to one of the members of the school board the other day, and they said, their meetings have been civil. So there's all those things that go into, creating a desirable place to live in a great society in which to exist. But, we have that, we just have a tremendous amount of that in Wood County, especially down here in the Wisconsin Rapids area. There are challenges. We saw, the mill closure this year, but I have hope that that's going to be back and operational soon. And the list is too long. If you would have had me write it down, it probably would have been 3 pages. But we're blessed. We're lucky. And I'm sitting here looking at one of the plaques you have on the desk here, and it says, be the change that you wish to see in the world. And, I guess that would be my message to everybody. It starts with you. Set an example. You can't expect people to behave differently. You can't expect kids to behave differently than they see adults behave.
I can't imagine anybody's going to disagree with anything you said. I feel like that was a very, a very political answer, very generic answer, very good answer. However, it was wrong, Lance. I teed you up. You're supposed to say Wisconsin Rapids Community Media. They're right there, man. You're supposed.
I should have caught that. I'm not on my game this morning.
No, all of that is true. All of what you said is true, and I really appreciate some of the kind of behind the curtain thing that you mentioned there, because not everybody sees public meetings, not everybody sees that. I think that there's some people out there that may assume certain things about, rural, county, city hall meetings, all of that. It's nice to bring that up every chance we get. I think that is a really noteworthy thing to say.
Well, that's where it starts, James. It's those conversations have to occur. And, I don't care what, side of the political spectrum you're on. I find it troublesome, when I see some of the expletives that are used, whether they are aimed at, the Republican Party, the Democratic Party. I'm going, if I'm driving a school bus and I got 50 kids on it, I don't need them to see that. We talk about civility, and then right away we go, kind of off the rails.
Yes,
I have to be careful what I say too. but
You and me both.
We go off the rails, and then we expect them to behave in a different manner when they're there. I can absolutely disagree with somebody. I can have diametrically opposed opinion on that issue, but I don't start yelling and screaming. We try to talk through it, and usually you'll find out there are people on both sides, the extreme edges of the political spectrum, who you're never going to convince, you're never going to change their mind. But there's a vast middle. Yeah. And do I always get my way on, let's say, county issues? The answer is no. But do we usually end up with something that, is amenable to everybody? The answer is yes, usually at the end of the day. And that's all I ask, is that you have that conversation. And, it starts with, communities. We talk about events. You have the Christmas parade tonight. Obviously, the tragedy that, has been a nationwide studies there. But, we have tremendous cooperation within our law enforcement community. I know our sheriff's department's working with the Wisconsin Rapids Police Department, to ensure that events like that go seamlessly. That's part of the pride that I have living here. I look at the mayhem in some of these places around the country, and I go, luckily we have elected officials, sheriffs, judges, district attorneys, people like that are going to provide for a safe community. And I think that the majority of the people want to see that. Yeah. So we exist in that environment. I don't want to call it a cocoon, but that's where we exist. And you make it happen. You're the change. The people out there, it's your attitude. It's your, one of the things we always see is the work ethic in this area. I'm amazed when I get to play, we don't have enough employees right now. I kind of find it mind-boggling when I hear the federal government say we're pouring trillions of dollars into the economy to create jobs. I'm going, I need to create bodies, not jobs. I got too many, got more jobs than I can fill right now. But we have a work ethic here. And when you travel around the country, you see that. And so, knock on wood,
yes,
for Micah.
Yes. And I think that, again, many of the audience is going to agree with you. I agree with you. I think that the work ethic is one of the things that stands out in this area. And I don't think that it's a coincidence that you have that along with some of the things you talked about before about stability and that. They do seem to go hand in hand oftentimes. And just to come back around to something you said about treating each other right in some of the for me, I'm only saying this, just me, not our company, not anybody else, just me. Some of this silliness and almost cult-like mentality that is in our communities and in our areas, and not just ours and all around. I was just in Point yesterday, saw some of it. I'm doing Day of Caring. This is an event that to me is one of the greatest community events there is. You get to go around this whole town and you're going to see different people working on different strangers' lawns, It's such a cool thing to be able to do. It's such a nice day. I show up to the lawn I'm working on, and the first thing I hear, I heard a little kid say to his mom, "Mom, what does blank Biden mean?" Because he's seeing this sign across the street. I don't care. It's your yard. You put up what you want. That's your business. I'm not saying this any different than if it was, this to Trump or any other, insert whatever political name you want. I don't care. It's immature. It's childish to me. It is one of the more childish things I've ever seen our community do. And for me, that's where I come from on this. And I'm not thinking about it me. I can handle that. I don't care about those signs or those things or anything like that. And I've seen it of all. I've seen it on both sides of the role here, both sides doing it. What I think of is the kids, because you're that same people that are going to say, kids, don't swear. Kids, don't do this. But what do you think? Kids are going to do?
That's what I tell you.
They're sponges.
It was a bus driver who shared that with me the other day. He said, "I'm driving a bus by, and like I said, I don't care." It was a previous administration. It's a current administration. It's no better either way.
No, I completely agree.
Yeah, there's a lot of ways to express your opinion. Negatively
like
without going there. Yeah,
so like an adult.
Yeah, so
it's like tough. A grown human being.
So we deal with those issues, and then from a county's perspective, we deal with emergent issues as they happen day to day. One of the things that it's, if you said what's the story of the year, it's COVID. We're still dealing with that. We have a large number of cases. Luckily, and there's been some tragedy in the community lately. We had a Wisconsin state trooper pass away in the last couple of weeks. But generally speaking, we're seeing a large number of cases, a lot of those in the schools, but a lot of those are very mild cases, kind of, moving to that herd immunity situation. Our health department met with all the superintendents the other day, and, we're getting there. You can't do it. One of the things we always throw out there is, what would we do if we could? And it's interesting because, Marshfield and Wood and Wisconsin Rapids have similar sized school districts. Mm-hmm. And no matter what we try, we kind of seem to end up with the same result. And it would be real interesting. Do not take this as Lance is advocating for or is doing this or is pushing somebody to do. But it'd be interesting to see where you take every precaution and if you took none in the other school district, if you had any actual difference. Because we're kind of finding no matter what we do, we end up with the same rates.
But every area is different. We've talked about this since during this whole pandemic. Every area is going to be different. So even that wouldn't be a just study.
It may or may not. Yeah. But one of the things
it statistically wouldn't be able to be.
One of the things we found out now, though, is contact tracing is almost impossible with the number of people out there and the events we have open. And one of the things I want to tell people out there, we used to get a phone call. If you had this, right now we're using a text message system. I guess what I want to tell you is if you receive a text message or a message from the health department, that is not a scam. It's not a spam email. We're finding that we can do tracing about 6 times faster. If we do a phone conversation, it takes about an hour per person. We're hitting about 6 an hour using this method. So that's one of the things we want to make sure that you're aware of. And the other one is, we've been told that these antivirals are going to come out, and we're going to have more information, in the next 5 days. One of the things, though, that's going to be interesting is those antivirals we're being told that they really need to be used within the first 5 days of infection. So we're going to need people that are willing to be, if you don't feel well, you're going to need to be tested. The at-home test, I'd say are fairly accurate, but you need to follow that up with a PCR. That's another thing. That's going to be another weapon in the quiver. But that's been the overriding story this year, where you go, what you do. The county's going to have a walk-in clinic in Nakusa on December 3rd. We're trying to get another one set up, I think, December 1st up in Marshfield. We have vaccine available, but I think right now we're waiting on another tranche of Moderna vaccine to come in. We should have that by the 1st. But, we encourage people to go out and get it. I'm not a mandate person. There's a lot of reasons, natural immunity, having had COVID, underlying conditions that make it impossible to get vaccinated. So I'm not a mandate person, but I would recommend you go. And
I feel the same exact way.
And those clinics are going to be available, and those are free. So I'd say take advantage of it.
Thank you so much for all that information, Lance. Always count on you for that stuff, and you always knock it out the park. Thank you for doing that. And it just as a side note, happy Thanksgiving to our Wood County Health Department and the amazing people over there. Any chance we get to mention them and do a shout out to them, want to do that.
I met with one of the superintendents the other day. They said the cooperation has been fantastic. And I'm just going to add something real quick because I made a note here. If you're going to one of those vaccination clinics, we can find it in the immunization registry. But if you have your vaccination card, let's say you're going in for a booster or your first one, bring it with you. It cuts the time down. And the other question I got asked by the public the other day, and I checked with our health department, was if I receive the COVID vaccination, how quickly can I get my flu shot? Or should I get a COVID vaccination if I just had my flu shot?
Right.
And the answer I got is you could actually get them together. So, if you want to separate it by a week, that's great. But there's not a requirement of waiting X number of days before or after.
Wanting to continue the strong tradition of journalism and what Carl Hilke and so many people did here. I did some homework on this, Lance, and by that I mean my dad had this happen the other day. Yeah, he was sitting there and he was feeling like a big shot for a second. There, I was like, yeah, I'll do both, but he didn't think he could. So then he got called out. Like all of a sudden he said, oh, now he's got to do it. So he felt the tough guy and I'm like, okay, do one arm or what the other arm. But he got them both done, and that's the only reason I know that. But I think that's a really genuinely good question.
Yeah, it was a question that came from the public, and it's. So that that's been a big issue, and so is the American Rescue Plan, and the monies that's coming into different local units of government, and what are we going to do with that money? And the one thing we don't want to do is start programs we can't fund in the future, but there are capital improvement projects we need to work on, and that's where I appreciate the phone calls at home or call my office and have those discussions. If you have a great idea, there's 75,000 of you out there. Most of you probably have a good idea. There's 19 of us on the county board. We are outmanned from a number of people, but always want to hear those and see if we can't find the best use for those dollars going forward.
You guys had a public meeting. Wisconsin Rapids Common Council held a council chambers yesterday. How did that go?
Went well. I think you're talking about the meeting that actually happened on the 16th.
22nd. I got the Monday to the 22nd.
That one
the public hearing here.
Oh,
you weren't a part of that?
I wasn't part of that one.
Think so.
I know on the 16th we had a meeting where as we progress in the construction of this jail, one of the things we had to do was vacate Avon Street because you're going to be contiguous to the courthouse, glass atrium. The design is really good. I mean, I think it keeps the historic perception of the building there, but it adds some modern features that really makes that building look sharp. We had to vacate Avon Street. That happened the other day. We're moving forward. We're on schedule with this project. I assume we're going to break ground in the spring, provided everything continues to move on track. My big concern is, supply chain
Yes.
and availability of product necessary, to get going on time and to complete on time. And hopefully that'll continue to improve.
I actually had a listener bring that up the other day. Like, have I heard anything about supply chain issues with all the work that's going to be done over there? I hadn't heard anything. And I think that we're still a little bit away from that kind of even being an issue, but it could be. It's certainly something that's got to be in the forefront of our minds. It's hard not to. There's almost no industry that hasn't been affected by that supply chain issue, so it's hard to think that they wouldn't be. Here's hoping, and knocking on wood, or whatever your superstitions are, do them, because we want to make sure that this gets going as soon as it can. And
especially construction, James. I mean,
exactly.
We have contractors out there building homes that are, they'll contract a labor price, but the contract will basically be open in effect to cost of materials and also completion dates. Because they just, no matter what they do, they can't get the materials, and oftentimes there's a lot of it's casework, things like that go in the building, other than just the framing and the walls.
Spent the first half of my life in construction, and long before a pandemic, and I can remember these things happening. So not as consistently maybe, but issues like this, and some of them created by that company more times than not, just a part of supply chain issues. It's always been an issue, just never like this, where it's been this bad. We've got these tankers sitting outside, and the canals and everything waiting around. Okay, so then I want to go here. The transportation utility. There's been a response about concerns about this and assessing could we use a bus system or any of these kind of things? And we've talked about this with the mayor a little bit. You and I haven't really gotten to discuss this much. What are you hearing, or what are you feeling about this topic and the likelihood of it or the unlikelihood of it?
Well, it's really interesting. It's not a county issue. I've had some conversation with Joe Terry at the city and some other people. It's a novel approach. There's some people who vehemently object, and it's generally been out of the business community because it's based on usage to some extent. By the same token, I see the other side of this. If you have a corner lot in the city and all of a sudden you're special assessed for $15,000, $20,000, and that was something you did not factor into your house payments, the total payment when you add in taxes and all of the other expense, it can be extremely difficult. So I can see both sides of this. I think we'd be the first city in the state of Wisconsin to actually do this. There are others around the country who have. And, it's a novel idea. And if you ask me, do I think it'll move forward? The answer is I think it will. I also think there's a lot of adjustment and tweaking that needs to be done.
Sure.
When they rolled this out, like anything else, you throw the idea at the wall and you go, it sounds like an okay idea, but then how do we make it work? How do we bring it to fruition? How do we make it fair? And that takes time. And sometimes in government, I'm guilty of it. We throw out this grandiose idea, and we go, we're going to do it. And then we go, oh, yeah, I didn't think about that. And I think that's maybe where we are in this. There's going to be pushback from some people, some areas, and we have to work through that. It has to be fair. But at the end of the day, I think it takes some of the pressure off those individual homeowners that are out there, business owners, where all of a sudden you're hit with this tremendous bill all at once. So, again, the county's not involved in that one at all. But I have had conversation in regard to this. Most people don't realize what unit of government they're talking to, because I've had calls about this.
Sure.
What are you doing? And I go, the county board. County's not doing anything.
Yeah.
And by the way, if I say I mean we, the board. But
Gotcha.
We're not dealing with it, but we get calls because people don't know. And then they're just like you did. They'll say, what's your opinion? What do you think? At some point, I think some form of this will probably be adopted.
For us here, it was more about just getting your take because we appreciate your take on things. I see where you're coming from there, and that is another interesting conversation about, a quick Google search will tell you who is in charge of certain things. It'll save you a lot of time of making those phone calls to people that really have no control over what you're barking about or what have you. Just as a side note, I think is noteworthy.
Yeah, people need to do a little bit of research sometimes.
Google, just use Google for a second, it'll tell you.
It's on the ballot all the times, but I've had people over time call me and say, why did you appoint that person to the school board? Well, school boards are elected, at least in the
Yeah.
state of Wisconsin,
Yeah.
and neither city councils nor county boards appoint school boards. And it's okay to ask. I don't mind answering, but by the
Yes.
same token, sometimes you wonder, well, what are you looking at or what are you thinking?
Yeah.
And don't get mad at us. Or,
Yes.
I
Yes.
get a complaint about something that's going on in Portage County.
Mm-hmm.
And I go, there's a county line. Going that direction is generally 80th Street. If you live in the town of Grant and you're not in Wood County, although what we do in Wood County affects you to some extent,
Sure.
but I can't control what the program or what's happening on that side of the line.
Going back to the transportation issue, I find that very interesting because I kind of looking at this from the outside, not really knowing too much behind the scenes about it or really the community's feel about it. I would have thought, no, dead in the water, this isn't going to happen. It's something that's being, like you said, thrown against the wall to see if it'll stick, but it's not going to stick. Just even a little bit of that you've kind of said about this is interesting to me, and it's going to be interesting to see how this goes forward. I did look it up, and we would be the first city to do something like this. So you're right about that. And I think that's also noteworthy too. To me, I don't know enough about it to say this way or that way to do it or not to do it or whatever. I just think it's worth talking about, and it's interesting. To be honest, I find it very interesting. I spent most of my life, my first part of my life, taking this L train, this L, the Brown line, this line, that. I'm used to that thing. I think of that as a more city thing than a rural city thing. But I do know a lot of people around here that they can't afford their car payments. They can't afford a vehicle, let alone gas prices, these kind of things. Public transportation might help them keep a job or get to a job interview or something. I don't know how many of those people are. I don't know how that percentage is. I don't know, how much that would be needed necessarily. I've also heard, one thing I have heard from the community when it came to this, and it was the last time the mayor was in with us afterwards, the concern about drunk driving. And that's that issue with that.
Yeah,
but
public transportation, a little different.
I feel like that's
issue,
a
but it's
different
huge,
topic,
but it's
though.
but it's a huge issue, and
Yeah.
we're spread out enough that I don't know that you can have a great, public transportation infrastructure. But
Yeah.
The drunk driving issue you brought up is a great one. I used to have people. A lot of people out there know I owned a nightclub for a lot of years.
Yes, you did.
And I'd have people that were in from out of town, and they'd be
great
sitting,
nightclub.
They'd be sitting in the bar, and they'd be going, "Don't worry." I said, make sure you're not driving. Don't worry, we'll call a cab. And I'm going, there is nobody to call.
Yeah.
And I can't tell you how many nights that I drove somebody home or somebody who worked for me. But that's a concern. And those are typically public-private partnerships that exist. They have to be financially viable. But when the need arises, I think we need to be cognizant of that. And, like you said, getting people in and out of work. The business, the utility, turning this into a kind of a transportation utility. What's really interesting there, when you base fees on traffic into a business, for instance, and I hear somebody make the comment, well, it only adds 2 cents to the cost of my hamburger or some comment like that. It does, but it probably doesn't bother you individually, but it adds tens of thousands of dollars to the cost of the business. So if I'm a business and I'm going to locate, let's say here in Plover, and Plover doesn't have that expense, that's a consideration.
Right.
It's a consideration, and so I don't know where that'll come down, but I think we're seeing more programs like this begin to exist, either local or regional transportation utilities.
Love to keep talking to you about this, Lance. Ran out of time.
Yeah,
but
I know we got to get on
the time.
the ODC.
We got people, you guys got Thanksgiving stuff to get to, I'm sure, or whatever, or get prepped for. But thank you so much for the time. Thank you for what you do for our community. Have a great Thanksgiving, Lance.
Thank you. Thanks, James.
And thank you to Kevin, our friends at Wisconsin Reps Community Media. Happy Turkey Day to all of you. We will take a break, come back with our friends from the ODC on Morning Magazine, WFHR, locally grown radio.